Welcome back to Up North at 4. So joining us now, we have JoAnne and Augden from the Northwoods Genealogical Society. And I didn't know this until a few days ago, JoAnne, but this Saturday is National Genealogical Day, right?
Yes.
How did this holiday, if you will, come to be?
Okay. It was started in about 2013 in Limerick, Ireland. A church was celebrating its 200th anniversary, and so they invited all their parishioners and the neighboring counties and Mormons and some Quakers, and invited them in to look at all the birth and death and marriage information. And so it just kind of continued, and so now it's just gone forward, and it's become kind of national, worldwide day to celebrate researching your ancestors.
Okay, so Saturday we have a nice holiday.
Yes.
Today is actually International Women's Day, so happy International Women's Day to you and everybody watching. So this is an interesting event coming up on Saturday. Is there any times for this, or?
Yes, it's going to be at the Rhinelander District Library from 10 until 12. And
Perfect.
Augden is our chairman of the group, so he knows a little bit more about it. I just have to bring in some displays.
Oh, you got the easy job.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
I was going to say, I don't know if that's so easy, but yeah, I was going to say 10 and 12 is a little bit flexible.
So what could people expect at this open house?
Yes.
We have a few goals. Number one would be to just show people what the resources are at the library, to introduce them to our group, what we can do, what kinds of things we can do, help those who are interested in getting started in genealogy, and maybe more importantly, those who have started, somebody in their family or something, who have reached a certain point and they don't know what to do or how to do it.
Okay.
So some ideas on what to do with the results of your research, how to share it with others, and how to get by those brick walls we all encounter.
Very nice. So I'm curious, this is kind of a question for the two of you, but how did each of you kind of get involved and start down this path of, researching history? And I'm sure it's a long history, JoAnne.
Very
right? Where did this
interesting,
start for you?
It did. It really started when I was much younger. Dad talked about a lot of stories and his great-grandfather and how he didn't want to have his salute the Kaiser in Europe, so he was sent to the United States. And so I have letters collected and information going back, like 50 years or something from relatives.
Oh, wow.
So it just was fascinating, and the history to go with it.
Yeah.
Wow, that's very interesting. Yeah, my grandma recently passed away, but she told us many stories about World War II. She was actually born in Poland, so that's very fascinating.
Okay.
Lived
Same
through
with the last name for me too. I just found out
Nice.
that a whole bunch of them were Poland in that area.
Do you know
Eastern Europe?
any cool old stories?
No, well.
Not yet, not
We're
yet.
still learning now.
Still learning, oh yeah, in the
Well,
process.
there might be some, but yeah. Everybody has those skeletons in their closet.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
Oh, yes. What about you, though, Augden? I'm curious, what kind of led you to this group now?
Believe it or not, my sister-in-law started. She got a subscription to Ancestry.
Nice.
Easy way for people to start.
Yeah.
My wife got into it. It started consuming her time. And I started out as a passive observer. And then finally, when I was retired, I got hooked, and unbelievable how much time you can devote because of what you learn.
Yeah.
And you get so hooked on what you're learning.
It's a rabbit hole, right?
Yes,
and
it really
you can go for centuries almost, depending on the family.
I have to emphasize, it's not just an interest in your family. You expand, and it's the history of where they came from, what was happening, what caused them to come to this country. I'll say that because it wasn't even the United States for some people. And yeah, it just is really consuming.
Yep.
Totally.
And very educational.
Yeah, and you learn a lot about yourself too.
Yes,
You know,
absolutely.
what kind of genes you have, maybe part this, part that. So
I learned who I am not and who I am.
exactly. Yeah. Very
All right, so
interesting.
this is a fascinating topic, and I'm sure a lot of people out there are very interested in this. And do you mind sticking around? We can chat a little bit more about it after the
excellent.
break. We're going to do that. Stick with us here on Up North at 4. And welcome on back to Up North at 4. We got JoAnne and Augden joining us from the Northwoods Genealogical Society, which I'm still trying to get that word out. It's
You're
a tough
saying it
one.
very
It is. Yeah.
It's a mouthful.
I
Genealogical.
practiced a lot this morning. Anyways, open house event happening this Saturday at the Rhinelander Library. And there's a lot that people can learn not only about themselves, but about their family history and the family histories that splinter off of that. And just out of curiosity this morning, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna learn about myself and Conrad, kind of see where we came from. And I learned a little bit about Conrad and the Sapinski family name, and obviously Ancestry.com came up a lot. I'm sure that's a very basic level resource for a lot of people. So I found a map of the Sapinski family and where they were living in like the 1920s in America. I don't know if you got a lot of cousins in Pennsylvania, Conrad.
I do actually
But you
have some
did like
cousins.
100 years ago. So I was like, I never knew this. And I found out a lot about you.
So I see New York is highlighted purple. I lived there myself for 14 years. Okay.
So yeah,
We
the
got
darker the
Wisconsin.
color, obviously the better. And the crazy thing was then I was like, all right, Myhawk. I got to be finding Myhawk. It's not a very common name. Nothing. There's hardly anything. But then I thought about it, and there's a split at some point in time, because I'm M-E-I-H-A-K, and there's some members of my family that split off, and they have a C or they have a Y, or there's O's, other I's in there. Knowing that, what would you guys suggest? How do I start to research this?
I was going to say, thankfully, many of the search engines now have a sound-alike option.
Okay.
So when you type in a name, they'll say, do you want it exactly, or do you want names that sound like this?
Okay.
And you put that in, and all of a sudden you get all those variations you're talking about.
So then, let's say I go ahead and I do this. What can I glean from that information that pops up? I know you get birth certificates, death certificates, marriage licenses. I'm sure those are maybe the three
Those are some of the obvious
most
ones,
common. Yeah, right. What else could you uncover?
You want to go first, or should I?
No, you can go first.
Okay. I was going to say, some of the things that I've been looking at lately, I think that are most interesting are immigration records. So you look at who came over on what ship and who came with them. You mentioned census records; those are biggies. Birth, death, marriage. Who owned what piece of land, when, how did they come into that? Did they sell it? You can look and find pictures of people. You can find newspaper articles about them. I always think one of the most interesting things for me is I'm one of those people who came from Illinois and moved up here when they retired, and I thought, well, it's a nice place, I know it. And then I found out this whole area was filled with my relatives.
Really?
And I did not know that before I moved. I had a great uncle who ran a hotel in Antigo. I had a grandfather who was a farmer in Merrill. And it's like, I feel like I've come home in some respects.
In some ways,
So you definitely discover ties to areas from some of that information.
Didn't expect,
It's like Wisconsin's in your blood. I love it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Something inside of your head was kind of like, we gotta go back.
Home.
Yeah, we're going.
Exactly.
The mothership was calling for it.
So on average, what's the furthest length we could look back? Maybe 100 years, 150? What would be like that limit, do you guys think?
I have it going back on my mother's side, way back to the Mayflower coming in.
Oh, wow.
So it's fascinating, and it goes all the way back. And then there was a bit of a split in the family during the Revolutionary War.
Yeah, wow.
And found out that some of my relatives fought for King George, and they were the Loyalists. And then after we became that, then they went to Canada. So then that's where you find these interesting things.
So, I feel like we could talk forever about this. And unfortunately, we are running out of time.
History.
But Saturday, open house at the library, 10 to 2. Go check it out.
10 to 12, right?
Sorry, 10 to 12.
10 to 12.
Go check it out, because you'll never know what you learn. And obviously, this is a fascinating topic. But thank you both so much for joining us today. We're going to be right back, though, on Up North at 4.